Adolf Hitler ordered the looting of thousands of masterpieces over the years, but there was one he desired more than any other. It wasn't the portrait of a king, nor a grand battle scene. It was the quiet image of a man leaning over a celestial globe, the Astronomer, by Johannes Vermeer, painted in 1668. Hitler envisioned it as the crown jewel of the ambitious museum he dreamed of building in his hometown, Linz, occupying the most important place among the greatest works of art in history. In 1941, Hitler ordered it confiscated from the collection of Edward de Rothschild, marked the back of the canvas with the letter H, and had it shipped to Germany. But war doesn't always fulfill the plans of those who command it, and this small canvas would go on to live an adventure worthy of a novel, from being displayed in the salons of Paris to the depths of a salt mine, hidden alongside some of humanity's greatest artistic treasures, and saved at the very last moment from destruction. But what did Hitler see in this work that fascinated him so deeply? And why did he go to such lengths to hide it from the world, ensuring it would never fall into the wrong hands? Johannes Vermeer was not a prolific painter. In fact, he left so few works that, if we gathered together every painting securely attributed to him, they would barely fill a single gallery room. His total output is estimated at no more than 35 pieces, making him an absolute rarity in the history of art. To put this into perspective, his contemporary Rembrandt painted over 300 works. Vermeer lived and worked in Delft, a small Dutch city, during what is known as the Dutch Golden Age. It was a time when the Netherlands not only ruled the seas and traded spices, silks, and porcelains across half the world, but also stood as a hub of scientific discovery, technological advancement, and intellectual thought. The same hands that traced maritime routes to bring cinnamon from Ceylon were also drawing celestial maps with the precision of a watchmaker. The world Vermeer painted in was steeped in science. It was the era of Christian Huygens, who discovered Saturn's moon Titan and perfected the pendulum clock, of Antony van Leeuwenhoek, the pioneer of microscopy, who, coincidentally, lived in the same city as Vermeer and would later become the executor of his will, and of cartographers like Willem Janszoon Blaeu, whose globes and maps were admired as works of art in their own right. This climate of scientific and commercial vibrancy filtered into Dutch painting. It was not uncommon to see domestic scenes in which a woman read a letter beside a map or a gentleman proudly pointed to a globe. In this context, Vermeer's The Astronomer did not emerge as an isolated whim, but as the perfect reflection of a nation that saw itself as exploratory, scholarly, and deeply connected both to the earth beneath its feet and the sky above its head. And there is Vermeer, the painter who preferred to show the world through interiors bathed in natural light, choosing to devote one of his exceedingly rare canvases to a man studying the stars. A gesture that, in itself, speaks to what the Netherlands was at that moment, a country looking toward the future, and an artist who, without realizing it, was creating one of the most coveted images of all time. Before us, a silent room. There is only one figure, a man deeply focused, oblivious to anything beyond the small universe unfolding before him. He wears a wide, heavy study robe of Oriental style, the kind often used at the time to portray scholars. His posture leans slightly forward, his right hand resting on a celestial globe that seems to turn gently beneath his fingers, while his left hand hovers near an open book on the table, as if he might, at any moment, turn the page or take a mental note. Light is the great unseen protagonist of the scene. It enters from a window to the left, just outside our view, and first bathes the astronomer's face, then his hands, and finally caresses the objects on the table. It is a soft yet precise light, not flooding the entire room, but instead carving out the space where the key moment occurs. Everything outside this beam remains in shadow, reinforcing the feeling of intimacy. On the table, covered with a blue and yellow cloth, we see several objects, a thick open book whose pages show both text and an engraving, a brass astrolabe with its intricate circular shapes, and a few folded papers. Each object is rendered with such fidelity that one could almost reach out to touch them. The celestial globe, slightly tilted, reveals constellations and golden lines across its surface, making it clear that what is being studied here is the sky, not the earth. In the background, on the wall, hangs a small painting within the painting, a depiction of the finding of Moses, the biblical scene in which the child is rescued from the waters by Pharaoh's daughter. It sits just above the astronomer's left shoulder, as if watching his work from another time, from another story. The composition is perfectly balanced. The figure of the man holds the center, the beam of light draws our gaze to his hands and face, and the objects create a kind of visual map guiding us through the scene. There are no superfluous elements, nothing to distract us. It is a moment suspended in time, captured with the precision of someone who understands that even light has its own choreography. Nothing in The Astronomer is there by chance. Every object, every gesture is a clue in a small visual puzzle Vermeer left for us. If we take the time to look closely, the scene becomes a map of ideas where science and faith do not compete, but intertwine. Let's start with the celestial globe the astronomer gently touches with his right hand. It's not an invention of the painter, it's based on a real model published in 1600 by Jodocus Hondius, a cartographer and instrument maker from Amsterdam. It shows the constellations visible in the northern hemisphere, and it's far more than a decorative object. It's a symbol of the entire universe, a visual reminder that man is trying to understand his place in something vast and ordered. The astronomer's gesture, touching its surface, seems to say, "Here, in this point of the sky, lies the key." Now look at the open book on the table. Thanks to modern research, we know it is Institutiones Astronomicae et Geographicae by the Dutch astronomer Adrien Metius in its 1621 edition. Vermeer painted it open right at the beginning of the chapter on the observation of the stars. And there, on that page, appears a telling phrase, "Seek inspiration from God." In other words, in the heart of the Dutch Golden Age, the scientific exploration of the heavens was conceived as an act guided by the divine. To us, it may seem like a contradiction. To them, it was natural for science and faith to share the same table. Next to the book is the astrolabe. That brass disc, with its rings and markings, was an essential tool for measuring the positions of celestial bodies and calculating time or latitude. In the hands of a navigator, it could guide a ship across oceans. In the hands of an astronomer, it helped chart the stars. Vermeer places it both on the table and in the book's illustration, doubling its presence to highlight its importance. It's as if he wanted to ensure we notice and understand. Science is not just ideas, it is also the instruments that allow us to measure and verify. And finally, that small painting on the wall, the finding of Moses. What is it doing here? According to tradition, Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, which included astronomy and mathematics. His figure embodies the idea of ancient wisdom that transcends centuries and cultures. Placing him above the astronomer is like putting an old master watching over the work of a modern disciple. Every element speaks. The globe reminds us of the immensity of the cosmos. Metius's book tells us that knowledge is sought with both mind and spirit. The astrolabe connects us to precision and technique, and Moses links us to tradition and cultural heritage. Taken together, the astronomer is not just the image of a man studying the sky, it is a visual manifesto that true knowledge is born when human curiosity and faith in something greater walk hand in hand. However, none of this explains why Hitler was so drawn to this painting, or why he wanted it as a key piece in his museum. But before I tell you, remember that this work is available in our store as a high-quality reproduction that preserves every detail of the original. Worldwide shipping is free, and in the catalog you'll find more than 600 historical artworks, each accompanied by its story, so you can choose your favorite and add it to your collection. By purchasing from the store, you're supporting the channel so I can continue creating videos like this one. You'll find a link in the description. Now then, let's continue. In 1940, with Paris under German occupation, the city's most valuable possessions began to be inventoried and confiscated by the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, the group tasked with gathering artworks for the Third Reich. Among them was the Astronomer, located in the Paris residence of Edouard de Rothschild, where it had remained for over half a century. The officers arrived with clear instructions. They carefully removed the painting, packed it in a wooden crate, and marked it with the code H13, the H for Hitler. It was an unmistakable sign that this Vermeer would be part of the dictator's personal collection. Hitler did not see the Astronomer as mere war loot. For him, it was a piece that fit perfectly into his grand cultural project, the Führer Museum in Linz. He dreamed of building, in his hometown, a gigantic museum that, in his vision, would surpass the Louvre or the Prado in prestige and scale. It would not only be a place to display art, but also a tangible demonstration of what he considered the cultural supremacy of the Germanic race. In that context, Vermeer held a special place in his preferences. Hitler was well aware of the rarity of his work, barely 36 known paintings, and of their value both in the market and in Europe's cultural imagination. In his mind, Vermeer represented the finest in Northern European art: flawless technique, light control to perfection, and subjects that could be linked to an Aryan tradition of discipline, study, and order. The Astronomer, in particular, combined all the elements that reinforced this narrative. It not only depicted a moment of study and discovery, but also referenced the scientific achievements of the Dutch Golden Age, an era Hitler admired and sought to appropriate as part of the Germanic heritage. In his logic, placing this work alongside the art of painting in the Linz Museum would be like displaying two cultural medals before the world, one for art and one for science. That is why, when the painting was confiscated in Paris, it did not end up stored in some random warehouse. From the start, it was destined for Hitler's personal collection. It would be part of the route visitors would take in his ideal museum, where the dictator imagined the Astronomer being seen as a tribute to the intellectual capacity and exploratory spirit of the North. A narrative which, ironically, had nothing to do with Vermeer's true intentions in painting it, but fit perfectly into the propaganda Hitler sought to construct. In the final months of the war, with the Allied front advancing and the Third Reich collapsing, the Nazis began moving their most prized treasures away from bombed cities. The Astronomer was one of them. The painting was transported to the Austrian mountains, specifically to the Altusee salt mine, a damp, dark place that became a hiding spot for more than 8,000 works of art, from Renaissance sculptures to tapestries, altarpieces, and priceless paintings. There, in cold, dimly lit galleries, wooden crates were stacked one on top of another, labeled with codes and destinations. Among them, the one marked H13, the sign that it belonged to Hitler's personal collection, contained the Astronomer. The plan, if defeat was imminent, was to destroy everything to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. In fact, the main entrance to the mine was blown up with explosives, but 2 Austrian engineers, disobeying direct orders, blocked the passageways leading to the art deposits and prevented the main charges from detonating. In May 1945, the so-called Monuments Men, a group of Allied Army art specialists, arrived at Altusee. They made their way through damp tunnels, lit only by handheld lamps, until they reached the crates holding the looted treasures. Among them, they found the one containing the Astronomer. They opened it carefully, and there it was, intact, its colors and light preserved, as if its time in darkness had never passed. That rescue not only returned the painting to public life, but also closed one of the most dangerous chapters in its history. After the war, the work was returned to the Rothschild family, and decades later, in 1983, it entered the Louvre, where today anyone can see it, without imagining that it was once a step away from being lost forever. Now that you know the full history of this work, I'd like to know if you think this painting would have had the same historical value had it never passed through Hitler's hands. Does surviving history in this way make it a more valuable painting? I'd love to read your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.